Last time on Generation Classic, we took a look at the very early stages of Ocarina of Time. This time, we'll be following the changes that led up to the retail version of the game. In late 1997, the game's production would be in full force. Many images were being distributed to various publishers showing some major changes. This looks to be the transitional period when the developers were finally satisfied with the game's engine as well as the overall art direction and began focusing mainly on level design. Some notable changes at this point would be the new HUD, with the B button now being displayed with the item buttons as well as the placement for all the other buttons being slightly rearranged. Young Link still has yet to be implemented, as Adult Link is venturing within his exclusive areas in many of these pictures. As usual, there are a few areas featured that resemble finished areas, such as these earlier desert screenshots and an area here that looks similar to Hyrule Field. Something very interesting is that during this point in development, medallions were usable items. Medallion utilization was very different at this point, and each medallion represented a different type of magic. Remnants of this can be seen at the entrance of the Shadow Temple. If you look closely at the pedestal where Din's fire is used to open up the temple doors, you can see an engraving of the fire medallion on it. But this texture was corrected in the 3DS version of the game. But not only did they give the player magical abilities, but they were also able to enchant Link's bow and give it different magical properties. Along with this different type of magic, Miyamoto explained that he also had the idea of being able to mix the magic medallions together to create new spells, but it's unknown if this was ever actually implemented. Now, exactly 1 year before the official release of Zelda 64, there was some footage shown off at Nintendo Spaceworld, and this is what I consider the last major change in development, although it's nowhere near as drastic as prior changes. Definitely, the most interesting thing about this first video is the part that shows the unused area. This place has been dubbed the Wood Temple by many fans, and although looking similar to the Deku Tree at first glance, the areas do not seem to be exactly the same. Screenshots show off a map that slightly resembles the Deku Tree maps, and upon closer inspection of the second floor, the areas seem to branch off in a similar way. But most of the places shown don't resemble any of the final areas in the Deku Tree, and there are enemies seen here that cannot be found in that area. This could lead one to believe that this was a very early version of the Deku Tree, and that the final temple was almost completely redone, but some still believe that this wasn't the case for other reasons. First of all, the scene here shows windows carved into the wooden walls with light shining through them, and the Deku Tree has no outside openings that would allow for this. But the most compelling piece of evidence that suggests this area may have been completely separate from the Deku Tree is from an official Nintendo Power article that describes the playable Zelda demo at Spaceworld. It says that the demo was split into 3 categories. The first was a Hyrule Field preview, the second was various dungeon previews, and the third were boss battles. Selecting the dungeon option presented the user with 6 more areas to choose from. One of those areas was the Deku Tree, but another one was called the Temple of the Woods. Now, it's possible that this may have just been an early name for the Forest Temple, especially considering that to get to the Forest Temple you must go through the Lost Woods, making sense for it to be called the Temple of the Woods. So it's hard to come to a solid conclusion on what this area truly was, but whatever it is, this would be the last time this place would be shown. Something also worth mentioning is that it seems Link was able to perform a forward-moving jump in the trailer that was cancelled into his lunging strike. According to IGN, in order to do the jumping strike originally, Link first had to press B, which was used to jump into the air, and then press A to actually do the attack. It sounds like the jumping described here is the same type of jumping that was allowed in Skyward Sword, giving Link the option to jump forward and only allowing him to do his jumping strike if he's already in the air. But it seems like Link's forward jump was replaced with rolling in the final game. There were some other early videos shown at Spaceworld as well, such as this one. After Spaceworld, tons of images began to surface with dropped content. One of the most famous of these places is the Unicorn Fountain. Theories run rampant on this place, and it's believed that the Triforce was obtainable here and a Beamblade sword attack was acquired here as well. Also, this area is believed to be accessed through Zora's domain under the water in a concave section that looks as though it may have once held an area. But since the area is under ice, it cannot be accessed by normal means. Although, none of these theories seem to hold any water, and there is no evidence whatsoever to back up any of these claims. This was most likely just an early fairy fountain. It seems like the Beamblade rumor, as well as many other rumors, may have originated from a website called ZeldaPower.com. Apparently, a Nintendo insider called Sam was providing exclusive details on cut content from Zelda, but most of his information is flat out wrong and directly contradicts official Nintendo sources. He speaks of things such as a fishing minigame that was originally in 2D, medallions being used as an early version of the Ocarina, and when questioned about this screenshot, he said it was a cut side quest that was about catching Malon's horse. Almost all of these things can be proven incorrect. In this image, it clearly shows Zelda's horse pictured and not Malon's. Miyamoto himself said that medallions were used for magic, and the fishing minigame never went through any major revamps, and it was created exactly how it was intended from the start. Although there was a Beamblade planned and it was implemented, but it was never known how it would be obtained. There were many other things that went through some minor changes as well. Originally, to enter the Door of Time, Link inserted the spiritual stones into the Ocarina of Time, and looking closely at these early pictures, you can see the small colored holes in the ocarina. It's possible that the fairy ocarina may have not been planned at this point, as it's not seen in any pictures. Also, when loading up the beta quest, a pedestal appears in front of Jabu Jabu that clearly isn't the fairy ocarina. This would also infer that originally a song was necessary to get into Jabu Jabu's mouth rather than a fish. Based on this screenshot, the way Link used to obtain music seems to be handled differently. Despite this image looking a little questionable at first glance, the music note model that's seen here was found within the debug ROM, which matches the one in this picture, making it a much more credible source. Another item that's from early screenshots that's found in the debug ROM is Link's reed. This item would have been used to call Epona, but the idea was discarded in favor of the ocarina. This concept was later reused in Twilight Princess. There were also many other smaller changes, such as these ones. Some people believe that this is an early version of Fado because of the slight cosmetic similarities, and that she played a much larger role in the earlier versions and was possibly a sage, but there's almost no evidence to back this up. And here's some more altered content. And lastly, here are some pictures of inside Jabu Jabu's belly that are in a very early state. Around mid-1998, some of the last trailers for the game were released. Everything seen from here on was pretty much finished, but there were some final alterations made to the game before it was released. One of those alterations would be that Link apparently went through a few voice actors. If you listen closely, you can hear them here.
Español, yo creo que eso cualquier persona que estaba en España le hubiese encantado jugarlo en nuestro idioma, pero...
Aside from the voice acting, here are some of the last changes that were done to the game. After this, the Ocarina of Time we all know today was finally released. To this day, it's still considered one of the greatest games ever created. It's easy to see that the developers really wanted to create something different and refined, something that they obviously achieved. And although many mysteries surround this game, they don't end here. In part 3, we'll take a look at what happened after the game was released, and what's still going on right now.